Hi everybody. Every now and then in our lives, we find ourselves caught at the crossroads between a rock and a hard place. These moments often serve to reveal our true priorities in life, and that can be a good thing. So today, as much of our way of life stands threatened by the risk of this coronavirus, I can't help but wonder what this is going to reveal about the condition of our faith. So today, story time. We're going to be looking at a story that is written in the ecclesiastical church history written by Eusebius. And this is concerning the bishop of Alexandria by the name of Dionysius, who lived around the 3rd century. It was a time of great persecution, and there was a prefect or sort of governor, Roman governor, at that time that goes by the name of Aemilanus. All right, so Aemilanus was basically coming down on the Christians, and this is sort of like the exchange between Aemilanus and Dionysius. So it says here, I'm reading from 7 Eusebius chapter 11 verse 9, for those of you who would like to follow. Aemilanus the prefect said to them, "But who forbids you to worship him, if he is a god, together with those who are gods by nature? For you have been commanded to reverence the gods, and the gods whom we all know." Okay, so basically what's going on is the Christians, or sometimes called the Galileans, were considered as atheists, believe it or not, because they refused to worship the Roman gods, right? So Aemilanus is saying, look, you can worship your God, but also worship our God, since, they are all gods. Okay, so Dionysius answered, "We worship no other." Now Aemilanus, the prefect, said to them, "I see that you are at once ungrateful and insensible to the kindness of our sovereigns." Right? So, look, we try to be reasonable to you, right? We're not asking for a lot. Just be reasonable. Worship your God. By all means, also worship our God. But now I see that you are not being reasonable. Your actions are irrational. Okay, wherefore, you shall not remain in this city, but you shall be sent into the regions of Libya to a place called Cyphro. For I have chosen this place at the command of our sovereigns, and it shall be by no means be permitted you or any others either to hold assemblies or to enter into the so-called cemeteries. That's really interesting, all right? So basically, you're going to go into exile because you refuse to play ball with the rest of us, okay? You're unreasonable. So in this place, you are not allowed to hold assemblies. So no church meetings, basically. And strangely, it says you are not allowed to go into the cemeteries. Now, why did they say that? Because Christians have been known to secretly steal into the catacombs at night in order to worship, because they were often prevented from worshiping anywhere else. So, early in the hours of the morning before anyone got up, they would go into these catacombs where people were buried, and they would worship. So now Aemilanus knew this. So he said, "Now you are not allowed to hold these public meetings or even to meet secretly." Further on he says, "For suitable punishment shall not fail," right? So whoever is found to be in this assembly, he will bring peril on himself. So he will be punished, something will be done to them, maybe thrown into prison, perhaps even they might be stoned or killed. So what does Dionysius say? Upon these threats of not having a meeting, Dionysius says, "What opportunity did I have either to hold assemblies or not to hold them?" So Dionysius was caught between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, you have what seems to be an offer, right? All you got to do is just bow down to this empire. Just look, it's not asking a lot. Just do it, and then you can get on with life as normal. Or now you're going to go into exile where you can't have any kind of meetings in open or even in secret. And if you're caught doing so, you will be punished. All right, you will suffer for your convictions. So what is Dionysius going to do? So he says, "But through the help of the Lord, we did not give up our open assembly, but I called together the more diligently those who were in the city, as if I were with them, being, so to speak, absent in body, but present in spirit." Okay, so basically, Dionysius defies Aemilanus. He goes on and continues to hold these public assemblies. But in Cyphro, the place where they're supposed to go, in exile, a large church gathered with us of the brethren that followed us from the city, and those who joined us from Egypt. And there God opened a door for the word. Okay, so these guys, they knew that there was this threat of punishment, of severe persecution, but they continued to meet. You know, amazing, right? At first, we were persecuted and stoned. So sure enough, you know, you've been warned. But afterwards, get this, not a few of the heathen forsook their idols and turned to God. Wow. You know, what do we do when we are caught between a rock and a hard place? I mean, I guess in this case, you know, some would say that this is very clear. It's either worship God or, you know, be an apostate, turn from God. Or there are other instances in history as well. And this second story is written by Josephus in the book called The Jewish Wars. And this chapter 2, verses 169. So what happened now was during the time of Pontius Pilate, right? So Pilate was sent as the procurator of Judea by Tiberius, the Emperor Tiberius. So when he first came, now you got to understand, sometimes we got this picture that Pilate was this, you know, sort of kind guy, you know, who was willing to overlook things. But let me tell you, history tells us that he was a vicious guy, right? He was merciless. So when he became procurator of Judea, which included Jerusalem, this is what happened. He sent by night those images of Caesar that are called ensigns into Jerusalem. Right, so you know this Romans, they like all these emblems, these symbols, and these ensigns of Caesar. They'll bring it into Jerusalem. This excited a very great tumult amongst the Jews when it was day. For those that were near them were astonished at the sight of them, as indications that their law were being trodden underfoot. For those laws do not permit any sort of image to be brought into the city. Okay, first of all, this is a situation with the Jews, not Christians, right? But the Jews kind of, you know, they worship God. They knew the laws of God. But here was a case where it wasn't exactly a biblical law, as it were, but maybe a derivative law. So they had this tradition that you are not allowed to bring any images into Jerusalem. Okay, nay, besides the indignation which these citizens themselves had at the procedure, a vast number came running out of the country. They came zealously to Pilate to Caesarea Maritima, right, by the Mediterranean, and besought him to carry those ensigns out of Jerusalem and to preserve them to their ancient laws inviolable. But upon Pilate's denial of their request, they fell prostrate upon the ground and continued immovable in that posture for 5 days and as many nights. So they were really upset that, you know, someone had broken their law, the customs. And so now they were having, I guess, a kind of protest. They were just lying down on the floor and they refused to move, I guess, blocking the way, right? So the next day, Pilate, this is in Caesarea Maritima, and they had all come to his headquarters. And he sat on his tribunal in the open marketplace and called to him the multitude, as desirous to give them an answer, and then gave a signal to the soldiers that they should all, by agreement at once, encompass the Jews with their weapons. So what happened was, all the Jews were asked together, you know, I'm going to give you an answer. So of course, everyone came. They wanted to know, was this protest, was this plea successful? But Pilate, he had a plan, right? So when all these protesters had gathered, he had surrounded all of them with soldiers and their weapons, right? So that's what happened. So the band of soldiers stood around the Jews in 3 ranks. The Jews under the utmost consternation at the unexpected sight. So they were really surprised, right? Realizing that they had fallen into a trap. So Pilate said to them that they should be cut into pieces unless they would admit Caesar's images, and gave intimation to the soldiers to draw their naked swords. So all the soldiers pulled out their swords surrounding all these Jews and said, look, I'm giving you a choice, right? You're either, on the one hand, going to be cut into pieces with these very swords that you see drawn, or you can just, well, allow these signs into Jerusalem. I mean, what's the big deal, right? I'm not asking you to worship these signs. It's just a custom. It's not even a biblical law. Hereupon, the Jews, as it were, at one signal, fell down in vast numbers and exposed their bare necks and cried out that they were sooner ready to be slain, then their law should be transgressed. Hereupon, Pilate was greatly surprised at their prodigious superstition and gave order that the ensigns should be presently carried out of Jerusalem. Wow. I think it's not so much the specifics of the controversy or the conflict, as it were. But I think these events often serve to reveal where people's convictions lie. Today, as we think about how this COVID-19 is impacting our society, and particularly, on the question of whether we should or should not meet as Christians, and that is a separate debate all by itself. But at the same time, this also reveals our priorities. How important are these things to us? It may reveal our theology. Is coming together in church really an important thing, or is it just a sort of convenience, right? I mean, look, we can do it if you want to, but you really don't want to. It's not that important. So I leave you these stories for your consideration. To think about, what would you do if you were caught between a rock and a hard place?